Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, February 9th meeting of the Bennington Select Board. We are on the third floor multi-purpose room at the Bennington Fire Facility at River Street in Bennington. My name is Tom Haley. I have the honor of chairing this board. I'll ask my fellow board members to introduce themselves, starting with Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy White.
Good evening, I'm Jackie Matz.
Yeah, hello folks, I'm Clark Adams.
I'm Ed Woods.
Also with us, we have Nancy Lively, who's preparing to take excellent minutes. We have Town Manager Dan Monks. We have Josh Boucher from Cat TV. I see Jonah Spivak over there. Thank you. And we'll begin this evening, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. Nancy, why don't you lead us tonight?
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Jackie, could you share our vision statement that guides our work, please?
Sure. Bennington is a welcoming, engaged, inclusive, resilient community where everyone, regardless of identity, shares in our vitality and benefits from an outstanding quality of life.
Thanks very much. Move on to the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes of January 26th, the warrants, and the licenses. Could I have a motion to accept, please?
I'll do that motion for the purpose of discussion.
A second for purpose of discussion.
Okay, any discussion? Nancy.
in the warrants on page 6, 405025 Morton Salt, $94,235. How are we doing left in the budget with money for salt?
So we are almost guaranteed not to go over this year, not because that we won't use too much salt, but because there's no more salt left. And we've purchased all the salt that they'll allow us to purchase. So we're doing well, and we will not go over. However, we're going to have to be really careful with what we have.
And there's nobody else we can get salt from?
If anybody could find it, RJ could, and I know he's continuing to look, but we're in good shape right now, but we have to be very careful.
Depends on the weather, okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And on page 4, 405006, Greenman Peterson, Ninja Path, $14,416.
Yep, they are the oversight engineers that are required by the grant, and that is paid for, majority of it paid for by the grant funds.
Okay. But they haven't done anything recently, have they?
Well, they just finished out the closeout report on the project, so that was the most recent, probably about 2 weeks ago they closed it
So
out.
we're all paid up with the engineers and everything?
We should be, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Anyone else?
I have a question here.
I'll move down the table. Clark?
Yeah, Clark, yeah. Good evening. Page 2 here, item 404986, Capital District Veterinary. And of course, obviously it's for our canine. My concern is our last canine visit emergently was catastrophic in response. So are we looking at another canine replacement possibility here?
I've been told that Stark is doing fine. I have not heard anything otherwise since that point, yes.
Yeah, I know. That was my concern when I saw that. I wanted to make sure we weren't looking at another canine replacement. Thank you.
So I had the same concern as Mr. Adams.
Okay.
It's a big number, and if Stark isn't well, we probably should be prepared. But we'll take your word for it, Dan.
Well,
That's better than the alternative.
I have no personal experience, but I've been told that he's doing well.
Well, we're going to go with what you've been told, because I like it.
Thank you. Yeah, good news.
All right, anything else on the minutes, the warrants, or the licenses? Nancy?
In the minutes on page 9, line 318, it says the focus should be under. The word should say include.
Nancy, we can barely hear you down here.
Oh.
Thank you.
That might be some Josh.
Page 9, line 318. The sentence says, The number one focus needs to be under. The word should be include. And on the next page, page 10, 331, where the word says accounting, it should be changed to economy.
What's the line number again?
Very first one, 331.
Thank you.
And I have also a question here. Yeah, I'm confused by what's attributed to me. Discuss the diplomacy of renaming the community development.
Click, where are you?
Line 302, page 9. I just don't, I recall saying that, there was discussion of it, but diplomacy wasn't something I could be attributed to on that line.
What number?
Line 302.
So are you thinking it should just say we've discussed renaming?
I think so, yeah. I'm trying to sort out where diplomacy entered into that comment.
I think what the conversation was more about positive PR. Diplomacy did not, I can't recall that word being used. It was just a discussion about the name.
Right. So I think that would be a little more reflective that the discussion took place.
Okay, anything else? All right, seeing nothing, we'll call the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And no abstentions. Excellent. All right, moving on to public comment. I'll just quickly remind folks that public comment period is intended for members of our community to bring things to the attention of the public that are not included in our agenda. It is not a question and answer period. If you do have brief questions that we're able to cover, we will do so at the end of the public comment period. So ask your question, take a seat, and we'll get to them as is warranted. Please do try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And with all that said, we'll begin with Wendy Sharkey, who is going to tell us about new staff.
Good evening. I'm Wendy Sharkey. I'm the director of the Bennington Free Library. And my purpose tonight is to introduce to you Erin Williams. Erin, you might already know her, but she is now our head of youth services at the library. So we have filled the position. We think it's an excellent choice because of all the community connections that Erin already has. And she also would like to invite you to...
Hello. I am having an open house for families and interested community members, maybe from the schools or just anyone in general who thinks it might be beneficial to get to know the new head of youth services. So it's going to be February 19th, that's a Thursday, from 3 to 6 p.m. So it's casual, drop in when you can. And I do want to point out that that is the Thursday before SVSU's school break. So any families who might not be able to make it on that Thursday can hopefully come during break. So I'm really looking forward to meeting everybody. I'm really excited to be at the library. It's a great library. I grew up going there, so super excited.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Actually, Erin, stay there, because you're also next. Yeah, Erin Williams and Andrew.
Subject to change without
Hello again. Erin Williams, Bennington, Vermont, and I'm here to talk about the Bennington Community Cafe. This Saturday, February 14th, is a big week for the cafe. There's a lot of information about it. The most important being that there is a location change. It will be at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship School Meeting House, which is 108 School Street. We have moved the cafe there for this particular date only. After this Saturday, it will be back at St. Peter's. It is Valentine's Day, so we are doing something a little bit different. We are offering the same way that we always do, it's pay what you choose, but we're offering a special Valentine's themed menu. It's a more limited menu with smaller choices, but we're really excited to do something different. We're going to have some Valentine's Day crafts, and we're also doing an event with the Bike Hub because it is that time. So they will be having their monthly group ride to the cafe. Andrew's going to talk a little bit more about that after. But yeah, location change, super important. UUFB instead of St. Peter's. Same time, so 1:30 to 3. You can come closer to 1 o'clock if you're participating in the ride or not. That's when we'll have the doors open. And yeah, Andrew, go ahead.
Andrew Hall of Bennington, Vermont. So some specifics on the group ride. So we run these every month. Starts at the bike shop at noon. Super family friendly. So we typically will do the rail trail, the ninja path, if depending on snow cover, other connectors around town. So super family friendly. You bring the kids in a trailer, etc. This time of year, it's cold, but we have winter gear to help with that. So we have a winter gear lending library that is free rentals of winter-specific riding gear, so stuff like good gloves, good hats, handlebar covers, so your hands don't get cold, all of that stuff. So no excuses. We have plenty of winter gear for you to use for this ride. Another thing that we also have is e-bike lending library. So on top of gear, we also have bikes for you. So we have a fleet of 4 electric bikes that can be used for these events at no charge. So kind of regardless of skill level, regardless of what you have for gear, there is a place for you on these rides, and we'd be glad to have you.
One more thing, if you have any questions about this particular Saturday's cafe, because like I said, there's a lot going on, just reach out to benningtoncommunitycafe@gmail.com and we will answer all of your questions, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. They have cold weather gear. I'm repeating that because I've heard that said a couple of times. So I'll be home where it's warm, but they have cold weather gear.
Kate, come on up. Talk about CPAR, but I can't tell what the second word is.
Good evening. Kate Koss, Bennington, and I'm chair of the Community Policing Advisory Review Board. I just wanted to let you know about 2 presentations we're having at our February 26th meeting. The first one is a presentation by Corporal Racana on Vermont's pre-charge program. The pre-charge program is a method of case resolution prior to charges being referred to court. It's used primarily for juveniles involved in low-level crime who are referred to the program by BPD with approval from the state's attorney's office. Actually, the state attorney, so Erica Marthage does the approval of that. Our second presentation is by Lieutenant Grandy, and it's about the opportunities the Ben Stat program offers to high users of police services in collaboration with human service organizations in Bennington. He'll highlight the differences between this initiative that's been going on for several years with the situation table, which was created by the state. Again, focusing on high users of police services, but in Bennington County, so that's countywide. And again, that's a collaboration with human service organizations. And then Project Alliance, and sometimes people get those 3 confused, and they're very different. Project Alliance is a collaboration of public and private organizations to problem solve particular issues, like how to provide services, what's the best way to provide services to a particular community or group. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kate. Is there anyone that wanted to speak that did not have the opportunity to sign up? All right, very good. Thank you, everyone. Next up, we have our annual audit presentation, the fiscal year 2025 audit presentation. We have a representative from RHR Smith & Company, John Boulay, who I believe is on our brand-new screen.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, this is an honor to be, the first Zoom meeting, so, I'm excited to give this presentation today. Again, my name is John Boulay with RHR Smith. I was the audit manager this year for the town of Bennington. I've been talking to Melissa a little bit about this presentation. I have maybe about 17 or 18 quick slides to go through, so I'm going to share my screen and we can kind of get going. So can you see my screen here? How's that?
No. Can't read it.
We have this in front of us.
Oh, this is what we've got, okay.
So do you all have the audit report in front of you? Is that what you're looking at right now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, sometimes I'll create some notes on the actual audit. This year, I have a short presentation to go through. So I think a lot of the discussion topics will be related to the presentation, but again, feel free to ask questions. And, I do have the audit report open on the other screen. So I'll get started here. Basically a rundown of what I will talk about today, is going to go over the opinion that we provide. I'm also going to talk about the balance sheet, the income statement for the general fund, give you some analysis and comparisons, a 3-year comparison for each. Kind of closer to the end, we will talk about the enterprise funds, the water and sewer department, again, same with the balance sheet, revenues, expenditures. And then after that, we did a comparison between, 5 municipalities just to get an idea of what the numbers look like across the board. And, I'll end it with the management letter. And, I'll open it up to questions afterward. So the first couple of slides here are just responsibilities. This would be the town of Bennington's responsibilities, and I'll kind of go through it quick. The next slide here are the auditor's responsibilities. So, we provide a management representation letter at the end of the audit, and again, an engagement letter at the very beginning of the audit with some of these responsibilities included in those letters. And again, here, in this presentation, we've kind of summarized those responsibilities. So this next slide is the opinion. You can actually find this on page 1 of that audit report you are looking at. In summary, actually, let me see if I can close this, sorry. So in summary, to summarize this paragraph, we're basically providing the town of Bennington with an unmodified opinion, which is the highest opinion a municipality can receive. So kudos to everybody over there, and kudos, especially to Melissa for providing us with the documentation and, keeping a clean set of books. So that's on page 1, and it's going to be, this second paragraph right here in the middle. Right here. Right. So now we're going to get into some of the meat and potatoes. This first chart is a balance sheet analysis of just the general fund. Nothing really pops out at me on this slide. Cash had decreased in 24. I think for some projects, where it's increasing again in 25. So we're getting back up to where it once was a few years ago. Your total assets have increased over the past 3 years. You can actually see an increase in total liabilities here from 24 to 25. If we actually look at statement C on the audit report, it's mainly due to accounts payable, additional accounts payable at year end. So that's that major increase there. Fund balance staying very steady over the past 3 years. There was a little dip here in 25, but I'm not worried about that at all, and I'll kind of explain that in a subsequent slide here. So not too worried about that, staying very similar. So here's a breakdown of said fund balance. 58% is assigned, 23% committed, and then 16% unassigned. I would say this is, very similar to other municipalities. I do normally see about 50% assigned and then maybe 25 committed, 25 unassigned. So we kind of have that similar view here with half of it being assigned and then, close to a quarter apiece for committed and unassigned. And, some more in-depth, more detail on the assigned fund balances and committed fund balances are going to be in, I believe, notes 11 through 14. Don't quote me, I don't know the exact notes, but you can find those on pages 46 and 47 of the audit report there. And, just going in, although it is 3% of the total fund balance, this non-spendable number is just going to be the prepaid items at year end. And that number, can change, not drastic, but it changes from year to year. So this 3%, you could see that go up, you could see that go down year after year. So very minimal there. So this next slide is the fund balance analysis, kind of in a different view, comparing prior years. A couple things to note on this slide. You'll see the blue column here is 2023. So in 2023, we showed a large restricted fund balance, and then 24 and 25 says 0. That's only because we reclassified it, as assigned. So in 23, very low assigned. Then 24 and 25, you can see them, getting much higher because this restricted is now considered assigned. Year over year, using committed fund balance for specific projects, that is, very normal. And again, minimal non-spendable fund balance here, kind of stays the same year over year with a little increase. And then going back to the unassigned fund balance that decreased on the prior slide, when we think of the money you have to use, the free money, it's going to be this unassigned column. And this green is 2025. So you can see between 24 and 25, there was a fairly large increase in the unassigned fund balance, which is very good to see. Good cash flow, revenues and expenses. You received more revenue than anticipated, which outweighed those expenditures from 25. And, a little more in depth here, the unassigned of 1 million here is about 6% of the total budgeted expenses. Just kind of a quick look at that. Okay, so now we're getting into the income statement, revenues and expenses. So this is going to be your revenues slide. You can see the majority of the revenues received are from taxes. You have some minimal intergovernmental revenues, which I say minimal comparatively, but still a good chunk of money. These would be grants, any income from other agencies. And then very minimal other income sources. Miscellaneous revenues has been increasing year over year. Off the top of my head, I don't know exactly what these miscellaneous revenues are, but I can get some information if you would want that. But yeah, majority of the revenues are going to be from taxes here. Just a different look at it. This is the budget to actual here for the revenues. You can see that you have actually received 2.1 million more than what was estimated. So this is, very good in the grand scheme of things if you're looking at the bottom line. And, the two line items that make up the majority are going to be the intergovernmental revenues and these miscellaneous revenues. And again, more in detail here, this property tax revenue account here at the top, the 14.5, that actually makes up 75% of the total revenue received. Okay? So, taxes aren't going anywhere. There's always going to be that at least 14.5 tax revenue coming in. Okay. All right, so this one is the expenditure comparison, year over year. You can see three that jump out, this general government item, public safety, and the highways and roads column here. General government expenses increasing year over year, which seems normal. Public safety had a little bit of a dip in '23, but we're, working its way back up to what it was a couple of years ago. I think anywhere around that, $5 million range is pretty average for a municipality of this size. And then highways and roads, I was listening a little earlier. This has been a tough winter, and I believe last year was fairly tough as well. So we've seen these expenses increase year over year, but not by much. I mean, if we take a look at the '23 number, which is 4.1, and now it's 4.7, almost 4.8. Again, it's a minimal increase if we're looking at the total budget. Okay, we have some other small line items here increasing minimally year over year, debt service, other agencies. And then again, with this other expenditure column, I would have to dive into it a little more and just see what is actually making up the 1.6 million here. I would assume it's just the way we had maybe classified things a little differently than in prior year. But again, feel free to shoot me an email or something. I can definitely dive into that if necessary. Okay. And again, the budget to actual for your expenditures. I did create some notes over here. Just like your tax revenue, the general government, public safety, and then the highway and roads, those three combined make up about 73% of the total expenses. And then here you can see those percentages broken down a little more. So all roughly the same, assuming that's normal. Those are, the most common expenditures for a town. So general government, is going to be, salaries, admin, expenses, payroll, things like that. Public safety, police, fire, and then you have highways and roads. Self-explanatory there. So at the bottom, we do show that the budget was overspent by almost 2.8 million. So again, I'm okay with that. I'm going to go back a couple slides here to the revenues. You can see that you did over-receive $2 million in revenue. So, the overspending on the budget is made up with those, over receipts of revenue there. So that's okay. Yeah. The bottom line didn't change drastically from year to year. Okay, so now we're going to get into the business type funds. These are the enterprise funds. Again, balance sheet here for the water fund specifically. There's really nothing to discuss on this. It's pretty normal course of action here with your total assets slowly increasing year over year. Your liabilities are very, very similar from year to year, a little increase from 23 to 24. Your accounts receivable, very similar, small increases. Then net position. The only thing I think that I will bring up on this slide is, your total assets are very high, your total liabilities are very low, which creates then this fairly high net position. So, if I go to my next slide, which is going to be the sewer fund, it looks a little different. Your accounts receivable is still fairly low, total assets, again, very high. But here in the middle, our total liabilities are actually a little higher than in the water fund. So that consists of, bonds and notes payable, sewer lines, things like that, long-term liabilities. So these are higher, which in hindsight decreases the net position. But, with the fixed assets, this does include unassigned fund balance, or I should say assigned or restricted fund balance. But for the most part, I think a majority of this net position is related to fixed assets, capital assets here. Moving on to the revenues, water fund revenues, a majority of the revenue in both water and sewer are going to be the charges for those services. Intergovernmental revenue, that large increase related to grants. And again, there could be some items that we had coded a little differently in prior year. That's why it's, a little bit lower. But again, you still have a majority, I would say, of your revenue coming from charges charges for services. And again, sewer fund, nothing really to discuss here. I would say 90 9% of this revenue is coming from the charges for services, and you can see year over year, a normal increase to operations. Next, we have a breakdown of the expenditures for the water fund. A couple things on this page, this building classification here. There were some large expenses in '23, not many expenses in '24, and then, back up, there was some, projects and some, I believe, equipment or vehicles that were purchased. More, over here, we actually have a breakdown, repairs and maintenance, things like that. And again, normal increase to administration, including wages, benefits, office expenses, equipment, change, I'd say a fairly big decrease, comparatively in equipment, but supplies, not much purchased in this equipment line. And depreciation, very similar year over year. And then other, I think we may have coded some of these old other expenses into a different, classification. Sewer, again, very similar, administration expenses increasing year over year. Sewer systems, not much going on in '25. The sewer treatment plant looks new in '25 as well, with $542,000. And again, equipment, not much equipment here in the sewer fund purchased. It's possible that that was now coded to this sewer treatment plant. Again, depreciation, very similar year over year. And again, same thing with the sewer fund here. There's no other expenditures. I'm assuming those were moved to a different classification. So we're getting kind of close to the end here. This is the municipality comparison. One thing is going to stand out right away. It's the city of South Burlington. We kind of put this in here just to show you what a major city really looks like. And if we kind of take that out of the picture for a moment, the other four, we have Bennington yourself as being dark blue, city of Montpelier, town of Richmond, and then the city of Winooski. So we do audit these towns and municipalities. So we have their audits are publicly available. I would compare the town of Bennington closest to, it's going to sound funny, the city of Montpelier, because if you take a look at their your expenditure budgets, very close, very, very close. And then again, if we take a look, the revenue budget between the two, you have a higher revenue budget. Again, you are receiving more revenues than the city of Montpelier here. And then at the same time, the expenditures happening are a little higher than the city of Montpelier as well. So, I'm not going to say it's easy to find some, comparing municipalities isn't the easiest, so we kind of went with, similar budgets, and then I kind of threw in that outlier just so you can see, I guess, where you're at with some other, major cities. So, and again, if you look at Richmond and Winooski, lower than yourselves, but I'm just taking a look at, how high some of these bars are. You can see comparatively, if we look at Richmond, revenue budget, expenditure budget, very similar. Their total revenues were just above their revenue budget, and then the same with their expenditures. Their expenditures were just above that expenditure budget. So it's very similar across the board as to A, what you budget versus A, what you either receive or what you spend. And if you want some more detail, we are using Schedule 1. We're pulling all these numbers in this information from Schedule 1 on the audit report, which is page 64. Okay. Then the last slide would have normally included the management letter. This year we had, no best practice suggestions for the town of Bennington. I think, Melissa runs a tight ship over there, and, everything was where it was supposed to be. She was able to provide us with documents in a timely manner. So we have no best practice improvements or recommendations right now. And that concludes my presentation. So, I will stop sharing and I will answer any questions you might have.
Okay, let's start with the board. Clerk.
Good evening. Thank you for the presentation. I kind of want to cut to the chase for the people who, like me, zone out with numbers. The bottom line is, can the people at Bennington be assured that we're doing well and we're financially stable based on your audit?
I would say that is very accurate, and one thing I like doing too is looking at Statement C. Statement C is actually page 16 of the audit if you want to flip to it quickly. You have, $1 million of unassigned fund balance. That is about 6% of your budgeted expenditures. So, I guess my goal for all municipalities to stay around that 8%. But after looking at the revenues year over year, I think, you're receiving more than you're spending. So we're going to see that fund balance number increase, I believe, year over year. So I would say, no issues right now with operations.
Okay, one other thing. I don't know if it was you, but last year, the audit, there was a comment about a reserve, encouraging the town to increase available, I guess, emergency or cash reserves, and I didn't hear anything like that. So I'm assuming you folks are satisfied with where we're at in that context?
I am, and what I'm doing now is I'm scrolling to page 46, which is the breakdown of those fund balances, and we can see there is about 3.6 million in assigned fund balances. So you have a lot of money set aside for specific projects and, specific activities. And then again, in note 14 that's the committed fund balances. Again, 1.4 million. So, I think you have enough committed and assigned as to if you wanted to create a reserve fund for future expenditures or, whatever you want to call it, I think putting some of that money into a reserve would be fine. At the same time, I wouldn't necessarily decrease your unassigned fund balance. I think that's, if you want to consider the unassigned fund balance a quote unquote reserve, I think that's a fair statement as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is just a comment. I wanted to thank the staff headed up by Melissa Currier for landing us with a no improvement recommendation. That's pretty cool. So congratulations.
Yes.
Nancy?
Question, on page 47, where we were just looking at the assigned balances, when I'm seeing 1.9 million for special projects, where do I find the breakdown for that?
This might be a good question for Melissa. I think I would have to actually look at the trial balance and kind of dive into the individual accounts that create that special projects. That's a really good question.
So Nancy, that is the money that we had received from ARPA that we set aside to use for the Ben High project and some of the skate park funds as well. That was not complete as of June 30th. The closing on that didn't happen until July, I think. So that, as of right now, has been cleared out after all of the transactions completed in FY26 for those projects.
Okay. So that wouldn't include the loan. The loan would have been from someplace else that the board made last year for the Ben High.
I'd have to look at the details to find out exactly what makes up the 1.9 million. I can only tell you at this moment that it is all related to the Ben High and skate park projects.
And do we have any ARPA left, which would be in the general?
No.
Everything's gone?
Everything's consumed, yes.
Okay.
In fact, we were required to expend it, so.
Yep.
It would have either been expended on things that we purchased or given back to the federal government. So it has now been expended on things that it should have been.
But I thought in the end of 2024, the board voted, they put it in the budget, it came out into the general fund,
Yes.
so that we wouldn't lose it.
Yes, and it went into that special project reserve that was then expended for the.
Oh, I thought, okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anything? Oh, I'm sorry, Jackie.
Yeah, hi. Hi, John. Thanks for being here and for this nice audit report. It's good to hear that we're doing well. I was just reviewing the notes from last year as well. You called out last year that we were spending significantly on special projects. I called that out as a risk with some of what's going on at the federal level. I think we've certainly seen that this year. You had mentioned that it was difficult to sort of tease out the spending on special projects versus core services because they were kind of pooled together. I think probably our spending has gone down a little bit this year, but were you able to get a better sense this year?
Yeah, I'm not 100% certain what you're referring to from prior year, although I did kind of a comparison with the prior year financial statements. I think that the difference is the way things were classified in the audit. It's not necessarily you're spending a lot more or spending a lot less. The way these accounts were coded, I think, are a little different. That's why there were some discrepancies, I think, on some of those sheets, I guess you would call them, or slides. So, when you say special projects, I know we just talked about that 1.9 million for ARPA. Is that what you're referring to, or more grant-related expenditures?
I think it was grant-related. I remember them indicating that a lot of those special projects were being funded with federal grants, that sort of represented a certain amount of risk. Although we weren't funding it with debt like a lot of communities are, so that was certainly a positive in our favor.
Right. I would say, I think, based on the state of the government, the issue with spending and receiving a lot of those grant funds is, like the ARPA, for example, that we were just talking about, there became a point where you had to, commit or assign that, that money for specific projects. So I think that's where that hesitation came from. You're receiving these grant funds for specific projects that are, approved prior to either spending or receiving those funds. But then, sometimes there becomes a point where, we have all this money, what do we do with it? And that's, I think, where the confusion comes from. But I will say, the state or the federal government will give you guidelines on how to spend that and say, at some point, hey, this is now your money, put it in a reserve for other special projects. So, to your point on special projects, the money will be there. It really just depends on the language in some of those grants or what the federal government might tell you. Those funds will be there. Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Well, thank you for the findings or lack thereof, and
Right.
thank you to Melissa. Obviously, well done.
Anything else from the board? Nancy?
Can citizens go to the town office and read through this, Dan?
Absolutely, it's also online.
And a
Its
question,
entirety.
sorry.
Sure.
Unassigned in the general fund, did you say 25%?
No. Are you referring to what it is currently or what a good estimated percentage should be?
Yeah, would you know roughly what our general fund is right now, unassigned?
Yes, I believe it is about 6%.
Okay.
I can get that number for you quickly.
That's fine. I thought you said 25.
Okay.
I was going to question.
No.
Okay.
So right now the unassigned fund balance is 6%. Sorry, I might be hearing your question a little wrong. The unassigned fund balance, in comparison to your fund balance as a whole, is, I believe, 18%. Yep. Yes. So unassigned, I believe, I can actually share my screen again if you want. Okay. So it's actually not popping up now. That's funny. That was here before. So this purple right here is the unassigned fund balance, and I believe. So 50, 76. So I would say 18, between 16 and 18% of your total fund balance is unassigned. that 6% I was talking about is if you take the 1 million in unassigned right now, divide it by your total expenditure budget, it's about 6%. Those are those two percentages again.
So can I follow up to that? Is that 18% acceptable and comfortable?
Yes, 18% is acceptable and it's comfortable. Can you still see my screen here?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so very commonly in municipalities of your size, this split right here is pretty common. Usually I see about 50, 25, 25. Assigned right now says 58 here, but it's very similar to other municipalities where you have, half in assigned, either a quarter in committed, a quarter in unassigned. So it's very common and comparable to others, yes.
Sounds like our treatment of reserve money and earmarked money and it's accurate, it's correct, it's responsible, it meets accounting guidelines, which is good because we debated that last year, so that's good to hear.
Yeah, I would say it's responsible. This 6% that I keep talking about, if you take your total expenditure budget and divide it by 12, obviously that's going to give you, 1 month's worth of expenditures. Again, if you take that 1 month worth of expenditures, again, divide it by the total expenditure budget, you get roughly 8.3%. So, in a perfect world, we would always, suggest having at least 1 month's worth of budgeted expenditures in that unassigned account. Right now it's at 6%, but again, if we looked at the revenues and expenses, year over year, you're in the black, so that unassigned number will continue to increase year over year. So I would honestly say 1 year, you'll see that 8%, maybe 2, but you're right there on the cusp.
Okay. Any questions from the public? Well, thank you very much for your work on this and for making time for us this evening and taking all of our questions.
Of course, I'm happy to do it, and I appreciate your time. And feel free, ask Melissa for my email. I'll be around, so I'm always happy to answer as many questions as possible. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay. It was everyone loves a good audit. Next up, we have the Tier 1B Act 250 exemption discussion. We have a representative from the BCRC to walk us through this. Nick Zayas.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me. And so we're going to go through what is Tier 1B, and then why would you want to opt into it, and we'll show you some maps that'll indicate exactly where this Act 250 exemption proposal would apply in the town. So if you want to keep it forward, okay. So you can get one more. So in your packet you have all this, but the gist is Tier 1B was created by the legislature as part of Act 181, which is meant to make it easier to build housing and mixed-use developments in the state and address long-standing issues with regulatory burden that were part of the Act 250 land use regulation regime. So Tier 1B will exempt from this regional level review projects of less than 50 units on less than 10 acres of land, and these are, in some cases, these really slow projects down, and they can cause projects to not happen. But that 50 unit and 10 acre threshold was designed to really focus on infill projects in and around the centers of the municipalities. And they will be based on maps that were produced as part of a separate but related process that that are very similar to the maps that you guys have already reviewed. Importantly, this represents an increase in local control. This is a greater reliance on your local zoning bylaw that you guys have worked really hard on the last couple of years. So it is a return back to a local say without a regional level review on top of that for this very specific type of projects. And where can these exemptions apply? They apply in areas that have water, sewer, or suitable septic soils. In your case, that is almost all areas have both water and sewer. They have to be outside of the river corridor, outside of the floodplain, except for in certain cases. They have to be in designated village centers or downtowns or your planned growth area. And your town has to have local zoning, local subdivision laws, and you have to have staff time to be able to work on this, which matters a lot for towns much smaller than yours. And then it requires the select board to opt in, or the trustees if you're a village. And typically, these proposals are being discussed with the planning commissions before they come to the select board or trustee level. So the Bennington Select Board, I'm really grateful, but unanimously approved of an Act 250 Tier 1B exemption, and they were really enthusiastic about it. So I was really, and my colleague Samantha Page were really excited to have this conversation a couple of months ago and hear that the Planning Commission was really confident in Bennington's ability to benefit from this Tier 1B exemption system. So where would it apply? It applies in these purple areas. These purple areas are pretty close to the areas that were shown in your town plan recently. These are the future land use maps. So we used the new Act 181 planning map criteria, created these maps, and the only thing that's changed are a couple of areas that are carved out of that. Those are wetlands that weren't going to be built on in the first place, but couldn't be having these Act 250 exemptions applied. But almost exactly the same borders as what is in your existing town plan. And just cleaned up a little bit. We matched the parcel boundaries in some cases to make it a little bit prettier and meet state mapping criteria. So here's the outline on a street map. I also added some like guidance markers and monuments so you can have some guidance of what's in and what's out. Largely, you have pretty clear boundaries. You have the parklands to the south, you have the 279 boundary to the north, and then you have the former Southern Vermont College campus, Old Bennington, the Mount Anthony Country Club, and the river on your west side. So you have very clear boundaries. This is not the conversation I've had in other towns where the boundaries of the growth area are very hazy or could be negotiated or changed. Yeah, you guys have already had this conversation recently, and we're really happy that you guys have had the conversation recently. And you have really good boundaries that are bound by beautiful parklands to say, this is where we can grow, and these are the areas that can really benefit from these small-scale Act 250 exemptions. So here it is over satellite. I just wanted to throw a lot of maps at you to see so you could really understand exactly where this applies. So what's the next step? You have a resolution on your agenda tonight. That is to say, yes, we opt into this. And this would be active in mid-2026. This has to go to the Land Use Review Board. The boundaries need to be reviewed. Other towns in the area that have really enthusiastically opted in as well were Manchester, Shaftesbury, and Arlington. I'll be in North Bennington tomorrow night, where they had a very similar reaction to the other towns, and then Dorset the following week. So these are the larger towns in our area. And this system was designed around towns that are your size or slightly smaller, everyone over between, say, 2,000 people. It was designed to really work for. So yeah, this is meant to generate housing production, lower regulatory barriers while maintaining local control, and making a manageable regulatory system for you guys to work in. Now, I'll address Tier 1A. If Tier 1B kind of implies a Tier 1A somewhere, so that'll be, and Tier 1A takes some guardrails off of this. It removes that 50-unit exemption. It changes who is in charge of administering Act 250 permits, permit conditions from the past. That is something the legislature created with a focus on some of the much bigger growth-oriented municipalities, particularly in Chittenden County, that 50 units was kind of small for them. So, so the Planning Commission did review the concept of a Tier 1A application. It's been discussed while the regulatory guidance was being reviewed and created over the last couple of months. But from our read on this situation, Tier 1A is not the right regime right now for Bennington, and it really has to do with the enforcement activities associated with previous Act 250 permits. You have plenty of those. You don't want to have to be charged with administering those. That's something the state can do for you if you don't go to Tier 1A. So the Planning Commission, again, did not recommend a Tier 1A application. It may also require some changes to your zoning bylaws, but that's something that we haven't reviewed yet. So on your desk tonight is a Tier 1B resolution, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that from the board tonight.
All right, thank you very much. I see a lot of fingers. I'll start with Nancy down here.
Again, why did I saw that a third of Chittenden County didn't want 1B, and why was that?
There are a lot of misunderstandings about 1B, but a lot of those towns just don't want to grow. They don't want to address the housing crisis, and they think that that's not their problem. But ultimately, the system was designed as an opt-in for a reason. They wanted to make sure that there was ground-up local opt-in, and those are towns that have chosen not to be part of the solution to Chittenden County's very acute housing crisis. But if you look, they're all clustered on the north end of that town. They share a lot more in common with each other than the ones to the south that have been making those plans, been part of the solution already, and drove the adoption and the creation of this regime in the first place. Certainly a lot of this work to create this entire regulatory regime was done by people in Chittenden County, and those growth-oriented places on the south side of Burlington really have been doing a great job at this, and they wanted to find tools that could make them do their job even better. And if you look at the towns around Bennington County, we see a lot of our towns that have been taking this conversation very seriously too, and they've opted in. There's only been one town that has really opted out that had a really good reason to, or not opted in, and that was one, Pownell, that was experiencing a really acute water shortage. And that's not true for Bennington. But from our region, the only town that really that should have or could have been considered a town that really would have really benefited from this was Pownell. And that idea of not having a town-wide water system was one that was going to put a damper on growth in the first place. But that's not true of Bennington. Bennington has plenty of water, plenty of sewer capacity to really facilitate being part of the solution. And that's true. And that's true of many other towns in this county.
Our wastewater sewer plant's going to be at capacity in about 18 years.
Yeah. But you do have some extra capacity, and importantly, there are other constraints on this. Ultimately, that is still a constraint in many of these towns, but if you look at, say, Arlington, they're a town that's under water moratorium and has no sewer. Manchester also has water and sewer constraints. Those alone are not a good reason to not be choosing to remove this extra layer of review, because they're not going anywhere. Ultimately, this is just making it so projects that do have the ability to get water sewer allocations can use that capacity, make sure that you're using the capacity that's there already, and so that you're getting the funds now to fund those improvements in the future, because excess capacity is, in the meantime, is not helping you build up reserve funds for improvements that you may need in the future.
And does the 800-foot driveway or road on private property, does that enter into 1B?
It does not. That is an entirely separate rulemaking process. If you have opinions on that, the rulemaking process is still open. I'm happy to guide you to that too, because that's one that's really a hot topic right now. That does not really have anything to do with this, other than saying that this is meant to be a countermeasure and offset that. So if you're concerned about that, opting into this is one way you can put some weight on the other side of the scale to make sure that those areas, which are really up in the environmentally sensitive areas with wildlife crossings, are things that really matter. But yeah, this regime was designed to balance this with the 800-foot road rule and the Tier 3 Act 250 extensions. So it's hard to talk about these two things as outside of the context of each other, but they are meant to be counterweights to each other.
Well, but there's a lot of discussions going on right now with a lot of concerns about that aspect, limiting housing and making it more crammed into the downtown, where I know the governor wants it to be more open to be able to do more housing.
I think people who are really into this should tune into the Senate Natural Resources Committee tomorrow morning at 11, because they're going to have a really, really fun conversation on this. But this regime is a very carefully designed machine. Whether it's meant to work right, what I'm here to say is that this part of the machine was designed to generate some housing, to make sure that it's there to offset whatever that development prevention in the environmentally sensitive areas is being created. But importantly, it's also designed to really take advantage of that infrastructure. That's why the maps are designed around infrastructure, and they're guided by statutory reasons to say, hey, this can only apply in those areas. And if the rules said something different, we would have drawn different maps. But that was not what we could do. So.
Thank you. I can appreciate mentioning that this is environmentally sensitive, and with that, your note on watching tomorrow in the Senate, I'm in favor of this, and I want to cut that red tape. So thank you for your presentation.
Jackie.
Hi, Nick. Thanks for your presentation, and thanks for the slides. I really appreciate having them ahead of time. I'm certainly in favor of this. I think, as you mentioned, it's going to remove a lot of the conditions that have been causing delays for developers that we keep hearing about. So I'm really happy to see this coming to us. I understand why we wouldn't want to adopt Tier 1A and be responsible for enforcing some of those regulations. If the state's still going to do that, I'm certainly happy to let them. The one question I had was about the limited exemption for 50 units or fewer on 10 acres or less for housing. I'm thinking particularly about some of the larger development projects that we've been hearing about in our downtown area that have over 50 units. Would those projects still be able to move forward under this, and they would just function under the old system? Can you talk about that? Yeah, anything that's over these thresholds or is outside of the area that's 1B operates under the existing Act 250 system. So that's the Tier 2 system, and yeah, it's the areas that are not in this, and then the areas that are over these thresholds. So the existing regime isn't going anywhere for that subset of projects. Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could I just add to that, because I want to make sure that it's clear. So there are still some, and Nick can, I'm sure, attest to this, there are still temporary exemptions in place that do not have limits on numbers of units, and we expect at least Energizer to be able to take advantage of that, if not the Putnam Phase 2, so that they can, under these temporary restrictions, not have to deal with Act 250, or temporary exemptions, not have to deal with Act 250. That being said, I think there's a June deadline for them to make a request to get a jurisdictional opinion. We're working with the Energizer developer to make sure that happens. Not that he needs us to hold his hand, he's perfectly competent, but we're supporting him in that effort. So we may not have to worry about that. And these temporary exemptions are actually significantly more beneficial than these permanent ones, but unless we can get the legislature to extend those temporary ones, this is the best we're going to have going forward.
Okay. Thanks for that context.
Clerk, anything?
Well, it's between Mr. Muggs and Jackie to hit on my concerns about the project.
Watch the legislature if you haven't, because, and we'll be watching in your stead if you want to just ping us if you ever have any questions. Dan very much knows how to do that. So we'll be carefully monitoring these regimes for a number of laws that may modify this. Hopefully, maybe we'll get some temporary extensions on these for a couple more years, so that would really make sure some of these projects get home that got started under these potential interim exemptions. So we'll be watching, and we want to be a resource for you guys. So thank you.
Nancy?
I know the types of housing that's already approved to go in. I didn't realize it had been extended out this far. And I'm concerned that a lot of people in Bennington aren't aware of what can now come into their neighborhood, and they're really not going to have a say. So I couldn't support this until we had a presentation explaining the types of property, the types of buildings, how many units could suddenly pop up down the street from you.
So Nancy, I can address that directly. There are no changes to the existing zoning, so what is allowed now is what will be allowed going forward. It just takes Act 250 out of the picture and allows
But the
our
changes
local authority.
happened 5 years ago, correct?
I'm not sure I understand what you're talking about.
When the select board, it was during COVID, and the select board voted on a big package of changes from what the Planning Commission and BCRC put in front of them. And I was at the Planning Commission public hearing before that as the only citizen in Bennington. So
I'm not sure I understand your concerns. We have zoning in place. That is not changing.
But that zoning changed 5 years ago.
Point of order, we're not here to talk about what happened 5 years ago.
Right. I don't understand how it's relevant to what we're talking about tonight.
Because there were changes made about 5 years ago. Things can now be allowed in neighborhoods that were never allowed in the past, and most people don't have a clue. I just think it's only fair that the public understands.
Well, then I would suggest that those folks, when these other projects come before the Planning Commission, that they go and express their concerns at that point in time.
And this Tier 1B change has no impact whatsoever on local zoning. It does not change the local zoning that exists.
And we're being vague. We're talking about changes that we don't even know what they are 5 years ago, so it's really, it's a moot point at this point.
Anything else from the board? Anything from the public? All right. Well, thank you.
So the one thing that I'll note is that there is the resolution on the table. So to adopt, you would need an affirmative motion to adopt the resolution as presented.
That's what I was just going for.
I would love to make that motion that we adopt this resolution to pursue Tier 1B exemption status for Act 250.
I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion? Any from the public? All right. And we'll call the question. All those in favor of adopting the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nope.
And abstentions? I see none. All right.
Tom, you do have the resolution in your folder there, and it just needs your signature, not all the boards.
All right. Thank you very much.
May I interject here just for a minute? Sure. So since we have Shannon coming up to talk about the Economic Development Committee, I thought I'd take the opportunity to introduce David Conwell, who's sitting in the back. He's our new planning director. David, you should want to come up and introduce yourself, maybe say a few words. David is now almost fully integrated in the office now, and and has become a familiar smiling face. So we're happy to have him on board.
Thank you for having me this evening. I am, yes, thrilled to be a part of this team that's been helping Bennington move forward for the last decade. I've been living here, witnessing it, and I'm really excited to be a part of it now. So I thank you greatly for the opportunity and look forward to working with everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And just in case you're looking for David, at the town office, he's on the second floor in Melissa's old office, just as you get to the top of the stairs.
It's cozy in there. All right, next, follow up from our last meeting, policy for a standing economic development committee. And staff has been working on this, and Shannon Barsati is here to explain what they've come up with.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm sorry I don't have the electronic version up on the screen, but you have it in your packet. So this is just following up on the presentation from the last meeting about the new Economic Development Committee, and you asked for a draft policy. So I also sent this out to the committee members for any comments. And today, if you approve of this, you can adopt it tonight so that we can move forward. So the purpose of the committee will be established to serve in an advisory capacity to support the Bennington Select Board in promoting sustainable economic growth, enhancing community development, and improving the overall quality of life for residents. The Economic Development Committee will focus on initiatives that grow the tax base, attract private investment, support local entrepreneurs, develop housing, and enhance downtown vibrancy. So I'm not going to read all of this, but essentially that's the purpose. The guiding principles will be to leverage outside funding, prioritize high-impact projects, measure progress, and engage the community. And this is a subcommittee of the Select Board, so we'll have consists of 3 Select Board members appointed by the Select Board Chair, and 1 member will serve as the committee chair, which now is Clark Adams. And then there will also be representatives from the Bennington County Regional Commission and the Better Bennington Corporation, who will be invited to attend, and other partners as well, such as the Southwestern Vermont Chamber, and others as needed. Meetings will be held monthly, and then the responsibilities will be to assess the local economic environment, recommend strategies and initiatives for housing, community, and economic development, promote collaboration between local developers, business owners, and government, and identify funding opportunities, serve as a liaison between the community and the Select Board regarding economic issues, and develop an annual work plan to present to the Select Board. And we'll present a progress report to the Select Board at least once per year. Also, the Economic Development Committee can be renewed by the Select Board at least every 3 years. Any amendments can be made by the Select Board, and then this policy will take effect upon approval by the Select Board.
All right, thank you. I'll start on this end this time. Ed.
Thanks for letting me go first. Let me start by saying that this is huge. Moving this quickly to actual practice is awesome. So thank you. And thank you to the committee that put it together. I have one point that I want to make, and that is, with no individual fingers being pointed, I think we need to change the way that we're getting people on this committee to more of a not appointed by the chair. Love you, Tom, but that's not a responsibility you want. So I think we need to rethink that in terms of how those members end up sitting on that committee. That's my only comment. I'd like to hear some feedback on that.
Yeah, we're at the crawl, walk, run stage, so we're crawling fast. So there's nothing hard and fast. And as we mentioned months ago, this was ad hoc. Jackie and myself were yakking and dragged Tom into it, and he agreed that we probably should move forward. And then Jim was brought in because not only he was interested, he has a municipal organization kind of expertise that all the rest of us were lacking. So
well, and the right people fell together.
So
sure.
I think the idea of expressing an interest is good, but maybe not necessarily a point, but approve if folks express an interest in sitting on the committee, maybe the chair can approve those individuals, and where if there are people competing, to keep it a non-quorum circumstance, then, the final determiner of that would be the chair. But I don't have any problem with wordsmithing it, but bottom line is we need a non-quorum working committee of people interested in getting the job done.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just trying to think of other subcommittees that we've formed since I've been on the board. And this one did come about a little bit differently, but the majority of the time, the chair asked who was interested, and people raised their hands, or not.
And if I could just add to that, the fact that it has to be a non-quorum board, 3 people raise their hands if they're, let's admit that they're elected to this board, they're probably qualified with the right group to sit on that committee. Maybe Clark is right when he says that it's up to the chair to approve them, but it's really a matter of making sure that there aren't too many people sitting in the room.
Right.
That's what that's about.
Yeah, and I think as seats came up, I think what the practice should be is, the chair will email the board or at the meeting, ask the board who wants to do this. And then we can talk about it at that point in time. I do think probably that the people on, I don't think I should be on this board. Personally.
Are you now?
No, I'm not.
Yeah,
but I don't think the chair should be on this board.
It needs to bring separate energy, so I agree with you.
Right, exactly. But I had no issue with Jim doing it as vice chair because he's in a more supportive.
And I want to make it clear that I don't have any problem with anybody doing it. I don't want that single point dependency, and I do want to make sure that there's not more than I want to make sure there isn't a quorum in the room by accident.
Right.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jackie.
Yeah, I agree. I think having some rotation on the committee is good, but certainly, we discussed that a little bit, whether the term should be 1 year, 2 year. 1 year is kind of short, especially on an economic development timeline to really get traction on anything. So I think that's where we wound up with 2 years there.
I think that was smart, and I think that a 1 year term is too short for an awful lot of these things, so I would agree. I would agree with the way you guys came up with that.
And we also know that adding responsibilities to the jobs that we already have can lead to a certain level of burnout for some people. I think, there definitely needs to be some kind of limitation there. Let me look this way, Nancy.
Sure. So I need it clarified. Are you talking 3 people on the subcommittee?
Yes.
Will be working with town officials and others. The majority of the board will not know or be able to find out information.
Oh, that's not how it works.
Yeah, I don't.
No. I wouldn't vote yes to that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's.
I don't think that's what the
what's
committee's
represented here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there would be regular report, at least one annual report, and I would assume if they had something exciting to bring to us, they would bring it
Well, they have
before
the
that year was
opportunity
up.
to do that every 2 weeks or every second and fourth or whatever.
Yeah, they could come to us and inform us on anything that's going on there in open session, just not, via a conversation on the street or at the grocery store.
But I don't understand the need. The voters elect 7 people to serve. The taxpayers are paying 4 people in the town office to work on economic development. They should have no problem if there's a project that they're interested in or someone wants to...
Point of order, Chair, we already asked the committee and the staff to get us this far. Now we're backtracking and saying it's not necessary.
There was nothing...
I'm
sorry, there was nothing in our packet before the meeting. There should have been if 3 people worked on it for 6 months. No, I'm talking before the last meeting. I had no idea, let's have a 3-person committee and vote on it. And I'll remind the rest of the board, the 3-person subcommittee started in 2021. I've tried to get this list on the agenda for 3 years.
I'd like to bring us back to 2026, please. This is how we get off the track.
Right here. and it has continued.
Which,
And it was in our packet last February in the manager's
we
report.
met for the first time in August, I think.
That's your three.
Well, but this is a different group than whatever it
Well,
was
I'm
in
trying to keep track
2021.
of all the different people on all the different groups. I am on the board. The public doesn't
Just
have a
because
clue
there was
either.
another subcommittee of 3 people at some point in the past doesn't mean it has any connection to this one.
we've often used subcommittees to actually do work more quickly than meeting twice a month. I was thinking, actually, Nancy, that this would speak more to your concerns that the Select Board isn't as involved with the things like Shannon's office or anyone else is doing, or as informed. By putting them in a room on a regular basis, 3 members of this board, I would think would actually speak to address that concern more than make it worse.
So when they're meeting, other people from the board or citizens can go listen?
Actually, other people.
We cannot have other members of the board, because that violates the whole reason
And this
that we
is
have
what I've raised
not a quorum.
concerns about. You can't have up to 3 people on the board meeting, making plans while the majority of the board is kept in the dark.
It's advisory only, Nancy.
It's advisory only, so any final decisions would be made by this board. And you also have to have a certain level of trust with your other board members, that they're going to behave ethically and in the best interest of Bennington.
But what you said at the last meeting, if they have something, it will go on the agenda. While you'll already have 3 yes votes from the subcommittee, all you need is 1 more vote from 1 other person on the board.
I don't think that's fair at all.
You know, Nancy, I want to adjust the way we work. A lot of the things that we hear about are private individuals with aspirations and plans for their financial actions. That's not for public consumption. If we were to hold those discussions in a quorum, these people would clam up and walk away. One of the major parts of this committee, in my opinion, is to create a friendly, open environment where people can come to us for advice and support in furthering their investments and involvement with the town of Bennington. If we change this to basically a quorum where we're record-keeping public discussions, people are going to walk away. That's not how business is done. Business isn't done in open discussions. It's done in small working groups.
Clark, anybody who's ever wanted to do a project in Bennington, if they don't need taxpayer dollars, obviously they can do the project in Bennington. If somebody wants to team up and involve the taxpayers and they don't want to talk about their project and answer questions, they probably don't have the money.
That's not been a discussion. One of the really big things that I've encountered in speaking with people around town is a lot of the developers and some of the financial people, they want to use their own money to move ahead, and they say, what can the town do to help us get this done sooner? Or is this something the town thinks fits in with our town plan? And everything I've heard so far from the various people we've interacted with, they're hand in glove with the town plan. So in the context of things being done behind closed doors, secretly or whatever, no, the town plan has already spelled out how we want to do things, and these are people who walked in and said, we would like to work with you in conjunction with the town plan to make Bennington a better town. And I just can say businessmen don't put their business in the street, and I don't want to do anything that's going to be a disincentive for a businessman to come to our town.
The guy that bought the Bradford Mill, he said no problem moving that project right forward. He didn't have to come in here and talk publicly.
One thing I just want to point out, actually almost every single project, usually along the way, are going to seek out some advice from the town. Maybe they question, the town loan program. Maybe they don't get a town loan, but they might ask about it. In the case of the Bradford Mill, he was encountering problems with, some of the state regulations. Talked to Dan, and Dan did a lot of work to make sure that he got through that process. So there are many ways that we offer support and facilitation, and it's not taxpayer money, it's our job. We're there to support and help these things grow, and I think that that's what this is about. It's about collaboration, and it's about working together in the same direction.
But my concern are projects.
Any decision about taxpayer money is going to come back to this board.
Tom, if I may.
Ed, go ahead.
I want to make a suggestion. This was drafted based on the conversation that we had at the last meeting. I think it's a very good draft. Can we go through this and look at what might need to be changed as a point of order and a basis to work from, rather than whether or not we need it? Because I thought we'd established that.
Go ahead.
Make a motion to adopt this as written.
I'll second that motion.
Question for Shannon.
All right, well, okay, go ahead. We now have a motion
On the town
table, so-
website, isn't there information where anybody interested in doing business in Bennington can look at and read and contact you or Dan, or we've got a new planning director, or Jonah?
Yeah, there is. And some people, that's all they need. But some people might need to call us. They might need more information. They might want to meet, with the committee as they're developing a larger plan. I mean, that's really the purpose, is that this committee is helping to set the strategy and also, to do more research and get more information that they can bring back to the larger board.
Yeah, there still isn't the need to have 3 people do what 3 started to do back in 2021 and made major decisions on the future of Bennington, and the public didn't have a say.
Okay, Nancy, I need to stop you there because no subcommittee of the Select Board has ever made a single decision. Not one.
Well, Tom, if you read this, and it was 3 people on the board, town officials, BBC and BCRC, and you can read what they decided they couldn't live without, the Ben High, the Putnam Block, and a couple of
All
other
the things you voted no for. We get it, Nancy.
But they
We get
did bring it before this board, at which point the decision was made. So when you were saying these groups are making decisions, that is absolutely untrue, because it does come to this board. And at that point, you can say whether you're for it or against it. But they are not making any decisions.
But
And you need to stop saying that, because it's not true.
You can go back and watch the meetings, where promise after promise in 2023 was made to the public. Many promises were broken. And our taxpayers certainly have had, the public has had no say.
Point of order.
Okay.
We have a motion on the floor, I believe.
So do we have any discussion on the language in the policy? Ed?
You heard that one comment I made at the top of the discussion? That's my only comment.
Do you have any suggestion to how you'd rather hear it worded?
The Economic Development Committee shall consist of 3 Select Board members, I guess the language is fine, because if you appoint somebody, it's because somebody volunteered.
I would never ask anybody to do a job.
You're not going to hijack people in the hallway or grab them off the elevator.
Would you prefer that people email first to show interest? Is that your expression? That you'd
Well, I
would
would likely at some point before
reach out for interest or something?
before these folks' terms expire, would bring it up and say, is anyone interested in serving on this, or are the people that are still serving still interested?
So that makes good sense, and maybe as the other obligations that we have as a board that are timely, maybe this goes on that schedule, and this committee needs to be revisited every X, 2 years, whatever you guys decided. As long as there's safety
Well, it
nets.
does say in here, too, that the very existence of this committee will be discussed every 3 years.
Right, but I'm talking about the appointment of new members,
Right.
like, oftentimes we are faced with new board members in the spring. That's an opportunity to get to know those new board members and without interfering in any groundwork that's being made by the committee itself up until then. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier with a 1-year commitment not really being enough. So I don't know what the number is. If it's 2, it's 2. It's whatever it is. It just should come up, because we know that history tells us that if we don't put it on a schedule, we'll be looking at this and saying, uh-oh, where are we? Are we scrambling to get this new committee seated? And I just think there's too much. This is too important.
On that note, I think...
Is this the name of the group?
Excuse me. On that note, I think what's important is we've come up on our 2nd year, so come next year, boom, we're all gone. So I think we need to ensure that there's some continuity in the future. So
now he's talking.
Well, I was going to, unless we are reappointed or choose to, and then I imagine over time, somebody that transitions off of the select board would transition off of this committee, and so you might just naturally get some staggered terms, which might be good too.
So that means that those terms might have to be a little bit informal because my term could be up, your term not. You may be sitting in a different seniority on this committee than the person next to you.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just suggesting that it get on a recurring schedule so that we can review it.
I think I see Ed's point. I support that. I think the way that the members were chosen 6 months ago, it was probably a little different than we'd want to do going forward, just by nature of the fact that the committee was just getting formed.
So I would just see us doing this every year at the same time we appoint boards and commissions. So I just think it falls naturally into that.
So with the understanding then that we would like to have more than 1 year, if we so Jackie, if you can't serve the second year, it gives us the opportunity to talk. We can't, don't want to, whatever. But it forces us to look at it. I think Dan's right.
Yeah. What about just adding the word annually, appointed annually by the select board chair? That way, even if, like you said, the terms are still, in place, at least every year you're looking at it.
As long as deference is given to those committee members who were sitting there last year and they still have more to contribute, right?
Sarah, you had something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, looking at it, I think Dan captured that. While we look at all boards and positions and liaisons at the same time, capture this as well.
Nancy?
So last meeting, your committee was going to be Housing, Community, and Economic Development. Is this the name?
No, we just changed Shannon's title to that.
That's my new name. Yeah.
Those are departmental changes. This is a committee change within the select board.
Page 5, or number 5, reporting. The EDC will present a progress report to the select board once per year.
At least
once per year.
Wow.
Wow.
Anything else from the board?
Sounds like progress to me.
Anything from the public? Chris?
Chris Maxey, Bennington. Is there any thought process behind putting regular members of the community on this board? Maybe people that own businesses on Main Street or industry or something like that, so that they have input?
So I can answer that. I mean, the idea is that we would regularly invite folks to be part of the committee discussion. But if you turn this into a board or a commission, it changes the way that it's dealt with as far as agendas and minutes and et cetera. So it needs to remain a subcommittee if you want to be as nimble as possible. Obviously, you could, over time, if you wanted to morph into something different, but I would suggest that we move forward with the subcommittee process for now.
Mm-hmm. And there is some representation here from the BBC, and you mentioned that the chamber might be invited to be involved, et cetera. So I think that helps cover that. I see where you're coming from, Chris, but...
Chris, I think that means when there's opportunity, stay at the table. That's what he shakes his head no.
Well, now that we know Chris is interested, we'll be inviting him to almost.
That's what I was going to say, right? If you've got ideas, we'd love to hear them. And
as long as you bring cheese and crackers. Well,
and I would remind the public,
we're not allowed to have wine during the meeting. So.
And I would remind and ask the public too that this committee would welcome public input, and their email addresses are easily accessible, and they shop at the grocery stores. And
this one,
I do see this as a living document.
I had a member of the community reach out and ask me if they could come and speak to us and sort of fish for some ideas, and certainly we're open to that.
Yeah, so I do see this as a living document, so I think that is something to consider as we move forward. So if we see the opportunity in the future, I think that's something we could revisit.
I think that's true of almost anything that's never been tried.
This is a policy. It can be changed at any time by a majority of the board.
Thank you. Good reminder. We're getting ready to talk about something. We should actually just, put the framework around it so that we can go do it.
Anything else from the public? All right, then.
I call the vote.
Yep. Call the vote. All those in favor of the Economic Development Committee policy, please say aye.
Aye. With congratulations to this group for doing it.
Any opposed?
Nope.
And I see no abstentions. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Yep.
Under the membership, someone said appointed annually. Is that being added?
I'm not sure if that's something that you want to do.
That wasn't the motion.
That wasn't the motion.
That wasn't in the motion.
The
That's
motion
fine.
was to approve as presented.
As presented.
I think actually that if people want to step off or are not reelected or don't run for reelection, then that will kind of guide itself. If Clark or
Thank you,
Jackie
Nancy.
or Jim come to me and say, I don't want to be on the committee anymore, I'll say, no problem.
Well, maybe that's not what you'd say. But
That's where it'd end up.
So there are really no essential changes to the document, or just ideas that were formulated?
Yes.
Right?
So.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Shannon,
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Shannon. I appreciate it. PFAS litigation resolution.
This is so exciting.
Everyone loves all these.
So just to be clear, this PFAS litigation is a class action involving public water sources. It does not have to do, it is not related to the wells. That is totally separate and distinct and was part of that settlement with St. Gobain, and is also, those wells are, the contamination of the wells is subject of an ongoing effort on behalf of the state to address those wells. Just to be very, very, very clear, we have detected no PFAS or PFOA in the public water supply system. This settlement would allow us to recover some funding from 3M and DuPont if for some reason in the future there was PFAS or PFOA discovered in the public water source. We are already a part of this class action, so we do not have the alternative of suing these folks separately, so we have to be part of this. And if you read through the email that Meryl Bent, our counsel, wrote, she does recommend that we engage the firm described to oversee the efforts to get as much funding as we can. The trigger would not be unless and until, and hopefully never, there is a PFAS in the public water system, but this would allow us to have the opportunity to collect under that class action if, for some reason, in the future, we did detect PFAS in our system. So, as you can tell from the email, Meryl has reviewed the engagement letter and has reviewed the contingency structure of the funding of this or the payment for this. So it, just to be clear, would cost the town absolutely nothing to sign up with this firm, and we would only pay if there was a recovery to this firm, just like we would any other firm. After discussing this with Meryl and reviewing it, I would ask that the board authorize the chair to sign the resolution authorizing the town to enter into a legal service agreement with the MSK attorneys, not to be confused with MSK engineers.
Thank you, that's what I was about to say.
So that we could move forward with this firm and work with them to monitor our public water system and recover any funds, recover from 3M and DuPont if indeed necessary in the future.
So Tom, can I make a motion for discussion?
Yeah, let's do that, please.
Let's get a motion on the floor that we approve that we authorize the town, the select board chair to sign the resolution as stated.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
All right.
That's where the discussion, right?
Discussion, please.
Could I just ask that the minutes clarify MSK does not refer to the engineering firm, the town routine. No, that's what I was thinking. Why are we hiring our engineering firm lawyer? So I think it's important that the minutes reflect that. It is not our engineering cohort form.
I see Nancy nodding. Jackie.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Dan, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense to sign on to this. You said that we have not detected any PFAS in our water. I assume that means that there has been some testing done?
Yes.
At what level? Parts per million, parts per billion?
I think the last test was parts per trillion. I will tell you that going forward, the new testing regime requires much more frequent testing at that parts per trillion level.
Okay.
So the interesting thing is, like, one of the requirements to be part of this settlement is you have to test, but actually we have to test anyways because of the EPA and state requirements, so it's not really a burden on us to do the testing.
Oh, okay.
Not any more than we would normally incur given our license to operate and EPA regulations. So we will be testing moving forward. We feel pretty confident that our water source will remain PFAS free, but we can't be sure. And so we will obviously, if we ever do detect PFAS, deal with it as soon as we possibly can.
No, that's helpful. I had some questions about how many sources we have and how much testing costs, but if we have to do it anyway, that's a moot point.
Absolutely, yeah. It became a moot point when those, I checked actually with Larry Gates, and he said, actually not a problem at all to test because we have to do it anyways.
So there's really no incremental cost because of this agreement?
That's right.
Excellent. Okay.
And did I see that the state made the requirements much more stringent very recently?
Yes, so they've dropped it down to, I think it's 4 parts per trillion now. It's significantly, it used to be 20 and now it's 4.
Yeah.
And that matches the EPA, so we're in sync with the federal standard.
Okay.
Now.
Nancy?
How will this impact, a lot of us got settlements even though we were on public water and sewer.
It doesn't. It has no impact on those previous settlements.
And even if nothing shows up in our testing in our public water, we can still get money?
No, we will not receive any compensation. Hopefully we'll never receive compensation because that means we never had PFAS in our water.
Right.
But if we do have PFAS in our water, we are entitled to a certain amount of compensation under this settlement. Now this is for 3M and DuPont. Obviously this is not applicable to Saint-Gobain. So if Saint-Gobain is ultimately found to be the source of any contamination in our public water source, they are already found to be the source in many wells and perhaps all the wells, we still have the ability to litigate with them. This is not take Saint-Gobain out of the picture. It does mean that we've already waived our rights under the class action, but it does mean that we can't pursue 3M or DuPont other than through this settlement.
So if I get, Dan, it's one of those things that's going through my mind. I'm on a well, but the aquifers, the wells tap the aquifer, but the town, I'm trying to sort of how the town water supply is doing so well, and we've got so many contaminated wells. So
sure, that's a very good question. So our water comes from our Morgan Springs is one of our main water sources, as well as Bowles Brook. And I know that due to some testing that they did several years ago, the Morgan Springs water protection area is mostly Mount Anthony. And that water actually goes through a series of rock, et cetera. It takes 100 years for that water to come to when it hits the surface to when it gets into Morgan Springs and comes back out. So it's conceivable that in 90 years, 80 years, we might start to see some PFAS in Morgan Springs, but we do not expect it. Again, nothing's guaranteed, but we do not expect to see PFAS in Morgan Springs for decades at least. Hopefully never. Bowles Brook has been, probably given its distance, has not been impacted. We would have expected to see impacts by now if we were going to see them. Again, we can't guarantee or promise, but both our water sources at this time appear to be relatively safe from PFAS contamination. And there's no guarantees for the future, but as of right now, we feel pretty good about it.
Anything else from the board? Anything from the community? All right, then we will call the vote. All those in favor of the resolution as presented, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And no abstentions. Thank you very much.
And Tom, that's in your packet of documents to sign this evening.
I have an extra pen in my jacket.
Yes. All right.
Next, Morgan Springs contract.
Okay, at long last, I think this is one of the longest negotiations I've had on a relatively minor contract, although it is going to bring in some significant funding for the town. We are proposing or recommending that the Select Board approve a water supply agreement with Premium Waters. You'll recall that Premium Waters, Primo was our previous water purchaser. Premium Waters was actually buying a bunch of that water directly from Primo, and when Primo stopped, when Primo stopped buying water, Premium Waters expressed interest in buying directly from us. We've been negotiating with them for quite some time now, but we finally do have what we believe is an agreement that addresses the terms that we'd hope to acquire in this contract. Just to do a quick summary, we're granting them, the Premium Waters, a non-exclusive right to withdraw water. We have specific hours that they can withdraw from the load station on Main Street, and we have specific maximum gallons per day that they can withdraw. And they have a maximum yearly draw as well of about 10 million gallons. We also have a minimum draw, so that they do have to pay us for at least 8 million gallons annually, so that they can't just sit on this and not use it and not generate income for us. We did, probably the biggest sticking point was raising the rate by about 50%, 25% to 50%. To 2 cents per gallon, and we did finally get them to agree to that, and then we have price increases of 2% each year thereafter. It's a relatively short term. The initial term is 3 years. They have one optional 3-year renewal term, and it does also include an indemnification of the town, so that protects us from any litigation that may arise from their use and sale of the water. I believe it does comply with the terms that the Select Board was seeking, and I would ask that the Board approve the contract and authorize the town manager to execute the agreement on behalf of the town.
For the purpose of discussion, I move to approve this agreement.
Second.
All right, discussion. I'll start with Jackie this time.
Thanks, Dan. This does look like exactly what we talked about. It's good to see. Your memo here, I noticed, mentions a minimum of 8 million gallons annually.
Yes.
But I happened to spot in the agreement that you attached on the page, on page 2, number 4, it says Premium Waters agrees to purchase at least 4 million gallons.
Yes.
Is that just a typo?
Yes. Yeah, it is a typo.
Okay.
Yep. And thank you for pointing that out. It is 4 million in the contract.
It is 4 million?
Yes. Yep. It's not a typo in the contract, it's a typo in the memo.
Oh, okay.
They're going to buy 8 million.
They expect to buy 10 million, and we require to buy at least 4 million, so that it makes sense for us to enter this contract. The good thing is it's non-exclusive, so for instance, if they're just not drawing enough water, we may seek other spring bottlers.
Yeah, I really, I'm in favor of this either way. I just wanted the clarity.
No, I'm glad you pointed it out. Thank you very much. Yep. But it is 4 million.
Clark?
In the past, I've had people approach me about the sale of the water. Where's that money going to? So I kind of would like you, Dan, to let the public know that this increased rate is going to go into the water sewer fund, which will impact people's rates, please.
Directly into the water fund, and it is directly responsible for keeping water rates low. It's extra income that we don't have to obtain from our ratepayers.
Additional income.
Additional income, yes.
Extra, you don't need it. We always need additional.
Additional, yes. Good clarification.
Ed? Yep.
So I got confused with the minimums, maximums here, and I apologize. It looks to me like the minimum that they need to buy is $4 million. This contract protects us up to $10 million.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, they can draw up to $10 million.
Dan, please explain why 13 is talking about a transfer of property?
Oh, this is just boilerplate language that says if we ever were to transfer the property, that Premium would continue to have the rights under this contract. But as you can imagine, we have no intention of transferring this property.
But then I think that should be taken out. I mean, when I read that...
No, this is only a protection for them, Nancy. We have no intention of doing it. This doesn't authorize us to do it. It just says if we do it, then they still retain their rights.
They wouldn't want this any other way.
Yeah.
So this is similar to someone having a right-of-way and a deed kind of thing.
Or leasing an apartment.
Right, or a lease.
Basically, it protects them if for some reason, can't imagine why, the town decided they wanted to sell Morgan Springs or the load station. It's just boilerplate language that they're going to want to have in any contract. It just protects them from any transfer that we might make.
So this has nothing to do with the land at the rec center property on Gage Street?
No.
It has.
It does.
Well, it has to do with it in that if we did decide to transfer it, they would still have rights to obtain the water that we have agreed to sell.
But that's what worries me. It's like we want to make sure they're set. I just want to make sure there could be nothing happening in the future where the town no longer has that land.
This contract has nothing to do with that, Nancy. What this has to do is if Premium is saying, hey, town, if for some reason you guys just lose your marbles and decide to sell this land, we still keep our rights. That's all this is saying.
All right, okay, I just...
Yeah, no.
Dan, said another way, is the contract assumable?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Anything from the public? Come on up.
As we mentioned, it's three-year initial term and then 3-year renewal, so a maximum of 6. Yeah.
Anything else? Seeing nothing, we'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving the contract, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And no abstentions. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, moving right along. More things to sign, unfortunately. Let's see. One action item this evening. There's a Vermont revolving fund forgivable loan agreement. This applies to the $185,000 planning loan to evaluate alternatives for addressing PFAS impacts on private property, on private drinking water supplies along Rocky Lane, Middle Pownell Road, South Stream Road, Colville Road, Niles Road, Fuller Road, and Lower East Road, which is actually in Chatsbury. You'll recall that I think it was back in September we discussed this, and this planning loan, which is fully forgivable. It will not cost the taxpayers anything to do basically a feasibility study of how we might, as a town, address these particular areas, whether or not there might be a way to extend water lines and other ways to address the PFAS contamination in those areas. Again, this does not bind us to do anything in the future. The only thing we're bound to do is complete the planning effort, and then we would be eligible and actually we would be entitled to forgiveness of the $185,000 loan. So it does address it does begin to address the PFAS, the newly discovered PFAS contamination in that part of town, and I guess I can't see any downside in working to try to find out how we might help these folks with the contamination issues that St. Cobain has caused.
So even though there is some land in Shasberry covered on here, that's really kind conversation for another day.
Very much so. I mean, so this does not commit the town to do any of the work, whether it's in Bennington or Shasberry, just to be clear. And obviously, if there was any crossing into another municipality, we would have to have an intergovernmental agreement regarding those lines and how it would be paid for, et cetera, and how the ratepayers in Shasberry would pay for the water that Bennington supplied. This is not unlike the sewer service that we provide in North Bennington, and it's across that village line into North Bennington, and we have a agreement, and it works out well.
Okay, I see 2 pages that we would have to sign here. Are you comfortable with them being under one motion? Am I reading this wrong?
So there's actually 3 pages. One you're going to sign, Tom, which is in your packet. And then I have 2 pages here that I will pass along for the select board to sign. And they're the note is one of them. And then there's a certificate of registration, that's the treasurer signs, and then a resolution and certificate that the town signs, the select board signs. So these are all standard documents. You've signed them many times in the past. Luckily, we have been granted multiple forgivable loans to try to address this contamination issue.
Okay, then, could I hear a motion to accept this loan agreement?
One more quick thing. Again, in the sense of for folks out there in TV land, understand that this is not going to cost the town anything.
Absolutely.
The term loan, because people hear loan, we're borrowing more money. I want people to understand that, in fact, the town is not going to be on the hook for any money.
Yes, it's a forgivable loan, so if they gave us the money and we didn't do what we were supposed to do with it, it will not be forgiven. If they give us the loan and we complete the study, it will be forgiven. Yes.
Okay.
So.
Could I hear a motion?
I move to accept the forgivable loan agreement.
And I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Any questions from the public? All right, seeing nothing, then all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Excellent, thank you.
And I will pass this along. It is tagged where it should be.
26 spots on one of these, isn't there?
They often only put 5 because most select boards are only 5, but we're lucky we have 2 extra members, so it's good. But you can always write wherever you can find space.
Well, there isn't. That's all right. I write as long as you have 6 on there.
Okay. All right, so on to the next, and Tom, you also have one in your pack, as I mentioned. So, okay, on to the next thing. Just wanted to give folks a heads up that tax sales are scheduled for March 20 at 10 a.m. at the town office. All the properties listed on the attachment to the manager's report will be up for tax sale with the exception of the Zames Luxus property. We were coordinating with Old Bennington, and they weren't quite ready to go yet, so we've postponed that tax sale so that Old Bennington and Bennington can do their tax sales at the same time. And that tax sale for the Zames Luxus property in Old Bennington has tentatively, I want to say tentatively, been scheduled for April 24th at 10 a.m. So the majority, all but one, of the tax sales will take place on March 20, and the Zames Luxus is tentatively scheduled for the 24th of April. So just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. No actions needed, but wanted folks to know that those were coming up in March. And that's all I have for the manager's report.
Question on the
Nancy,
tax
go ahead.
sales.
Yes, Nancy.
Is what I'm looking at, that's what each property owes?
Let's take a look. Yes, that's the total amount they owe at the current time. There may be some additional penalties and fees when the final accounting is done, but this is a snapshot.
I'm surprised by some of the amounts on a couple of the properties.
And you're surprised because they're high?
Very high.
Yes, I agree. And
is that something that you're looking at?
So what I may be considered a little bit aggressive, but I feel like we should go to tax sale every year. I don't think people are we're doing people favors by letting them get deeper and deeper into holes. I think we need to address them as they come up. So after these tax sales are complete, I've asked our collections department to begin the work on the next round of tax sales. These are probably 2.5, 3 years in the waiting. And in the meantime, several other properties have come up that have significant delinquencies. The process for tax sales now has become exponentially more onerous. It's very, very difficult for a town to proceed to tax sale now. So we have to start early and expend a lot of effort to get to the point where we have a tax sale. And obviously, tax sale is the last ditch effort. We prefer not to go to tax sales. We work really hard to work out agreements. Anybody who is on a tax sale list has not been able to work out an agreement with us or has failed to keep an agreement with us. So we try to be really flexible and do multi-year repayment plans, but for those folks that can't or won't, then we do have to go to tax sale. I will say most of these properties are because folks have passed away or they've moved away or different things like that. It's very rare that an occupant of a property, the original occupant of a property, is still in the property when we go to tax sale, but it does happen on occasion.
Are you going to be looking for a minimum on any of these properties?
So the minimum is the amount due. We cannot accept a lower bid. So if no one bids the minimum amount, there's a choice to be made, and sometimes it's a really difficult one. The town can either take it at that amount, which means we're essentially taking the property in exchange for the amount of taxes due, and there's no longer a tax due on that property. But it then does become the town's in a year after the redemption period occurs. And then what happens is the town will then, pursuant to a policy adopted by the select board, auction these properties off after the year redemption period has run.
But that 1 year redemption is important for the public to recognize.
Yes.
There is nothing moving here on March 20th there's a 1 year redemption period after that sale.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. That's what I wanted to make sure that I'm looking at a couple of these properties. If somebody's going to buy it cheap and then say to town, well, get me all this money so I can redo the building.
Right, well, they would not be able to seek that until a year and they have their tax sale deed in hand.
So this won't even happen for, okay.
Yeah, so there is a 1 year redemption period where the original owner could redeem, pay basically the amount of taxes due and any penalties, et cetera, and then they would be able to take the property, and the person that actually bid on the property, they get 1% per month in interest, so it's not that they get nothing, they just don't get the property that they'd hoped to get, but it is, they do get some benefit even if they don't get the property that they hope to purchase. It is an issue. Having a property essentially often sit vacant for another year while you wait to take control of it. Unfortunately, that's the way tax sales work in Vermont.
Jackie?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I notice here the Community Development Director's report is attached. I believe she is now the Housing, Community, and Economic Development Director.
That's correct. If you check our website, we did update it. But now I'm going to have to update my manager's report in the future. So. Did you title it correctly, Shannon, or are we still behind?
I'm still behind.
Okay. We're going to get better at that. It is correct on the website, though. So
I do have a question. I have a question regarding the tax sale, and I should have followed up with you earlier regarding this. I'm just going to name the buildings because they're so small I can't see them. Masonic Societies, the first one and second one. It's the Lodge Building and the office apartment.
Yep.
Can you just kind of describe those as a layout? I thought there was just one building.
Okay. So I think everyone's familiar with the Masonic Lodge building. It's a very iconic building in downtown. The Masons also own a property next door.
Okay.
And it directly to the east. And that is a property. It used to be a real estate business.
Okay, all right.
So Prot Realty used to be in there years ago. I'm dating myself, but I don't think anything's been in there recently. Chris might know. Nothing.
It used to be a Perot.
Properly,
All right. No, that's helping. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so those are the properties, those are the properties that are up for tax sale.
All right, thanks. I wasn't sure if it was a building behind it or...
No, just adjacent, yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, upcoming agenda. Vacant properties. We have
a lot of things, Tom. I'll just
community survey,
vacant property ordinance, community survey. We are going to be looking at, Shannon, we're going to be looking at some CHIP interest letters for the community. What does CHIP stand for? Community Housing and Infrastructure Program. It's basically project-based TIF. We have up to three folks who may be interested. We think we'll be ready. We think that they'll have enough information to us that we can present to you folks. Those letters of interest, all we would need from you is the go-ahead to submit that to the state, and then we could begin the process of seeking CHIP approval. Some of those may make it, some of them may fall off, but we feel pretty lucky that we have three folks already who are far enough along that they feel comfortable applying for the CHIP program. Remember, they can fund infrastructure improvements through the tax increment, the amount of additional, not extra according to Clark, but additional taxes that are generated by that project once it's completed. And I do also have a minor housekeeping. Every year we have to, or not every year, but frequently we have to adopt updated Agency of Transportation road and bridge standards so that we're eligible for the grants that they offer, as well as the local, the Class 2 road program, et cetera. So that will come before you. Shouldn't take too much time. And I'm going to request an executive session regarding personnel as well. So that's what I have coming up, assuming that Tom and Jim agree to that. And I don't know what else we have, Tom.
There'll be more by then.
Yeah, there will be. I like to keep our agendas down to one presentation, but we're going to have two, the community survey and vacant property, but I think they're both very timely. And we actually were hoping to fit them in on this meeting, but as you can see, we had a pretty full agenda, so we're going to push those to the 23rd.
All right. Other business.
Listening session. Didn't have it in December. Are we not going to have one this month?
I was actually going to bring that up when it was my turn for other business. I was going to ask what the opinion of the board was on that, so I plan to ask that question. Well, let's wait till my turn. Yeah, I'm going to ask. Sarah?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay, now I'll ask. We did give the listening sessions a pause over the holidays. The holidays are behind us. What is the will of the board here? Do we think we want to continue with these?
Talk back to me.
Sure.
I would like to take a pause on that until our meetings get back to at least 2 hours.
Well, we can't guarantee that.
I know.
It's a good goal.
We're so close tonight.
I was going to say an hour, but realistically 2 hours.
Nancy, you brought it up. Do you have an opinion?
Well, when we ran for select board, we didn't say we'd only be here for 2 hours. At this point, well, when we agreed to this a year ago, we agreed every other month, and we would each suggest a topic, and the public could mail them in too, and we haven't stuck with that, so.
Jackie?
I certainly didn't agree to only be here for 2 hours. That was gone by the time I was running. My question was if there was a topic out there that's come up, or I think we had a short list at one point of potential future topics. I think if there is value in a listening session, I'm happy to sit and listen. I listen a lot while I'm out in the public, but I can do that here too. But just curious what the topic would be.
Clark, your thoughts?
My thoughts are that the listening sessions were created because there were people who were consistently saying the absence of the ability to discuss something that wasn't on the agenda at a select board meeting needed to be addressed. And the idea that the listening sessions were going to be a non-quorum circumstance with free-floating agenda where individuals could come here at a given time to present to members of the board their concerns or express their views on actions within the control of this board. And I am a little concerned in two directions. Folks didn't really do that. And then when we kind of stepped up to creating an agenda-driven listening sessions, in my mind, it's kind of controversial. Say, we're going to have a listening session with this as an agenda item. So that in itself kind of contradicted the original intent. And even that has kind of petered out too. So I would like to reinvigorate the idea of listening sessions with the public understanding that this is their chance to come before this board, or elements of this board, and speak to those things that weighing on their minds. And if that doesn't happen on a regular basis, I see no need to continue with listening sessions unless the public is going to get involved. And that's the very reason it was created, to give the public an opportunity to get involved. And if they aren't going to get involved, I don't think it's right to ask people to come here on their off hours or off days and spend time, whether it be the guys who turn the light on or the board members who take their time out to be available to continue to do so. So I'm calling on the public to, if you want it, I support your desires, but if you don't demonstrate an interest in continuing and getting involved, I can't see requesting other people step up to the plate when the public's not willing to.
So I want to go back to this spring when this board reorganized and the reason that we talked about listening sessions. This is your first year on the board, Clark?
No, this is my second.
That's your second year. So we're going back 2 years then, because it was Clark as the driver here. And the purpose of that, in my memory, was to address a very high frustration level among the public of not having enough access to this board. 3 minutes, cut off, during public comment. That's an established policy of the board. It doesn't leave for discussion. The purpose was to bring tangible discussion topics to this where we would be unrestrained in the time that we were allowed to spend on it. And we had agreed that the format of that would be no action was to be taken. So that covered us with no quorums. It was a warning that went out with an open agenda, whatever, if we knew the topic. I think that if we could revisit the interaction with the public, the public comment portion, I think that this year we've heard a lot more and productive public comment. And I'm feeling better than I was a year ago about public participation. But if there are topics out there that are good for a session, and there are, and we've talked about some of them, I hate to lose the opportunity.
Yeah, I know. When we first talked about this, it was going to be just absolutely no topic. People come in, talk about whatever you want to talk about, and those are some of the most frustrating meetings I've ever sat through.
If you remember those, it's okay. 7 minutes, we'll wait another.
Right, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
8 minutes of silence.
Yeah, and then someone would come up at the 0 hour just because they felt like they were obligated.
Well, sure, yeah.
And that felt incredibly unproductive to me.
Agreed.
But when we did add topics like the monument and some other things, we did get more people in that wanted to talk about those things. So that felt more productive to me. I mean, we've actually taken action on this board as a direct result of ideas that came out during those sessions.
That's success right there.
And always, at the end, would say, does anyone have anything else?
Yep.
And invariably no one does. But at least they will always have that opportunity if we have these sessions as long as I'm chair.
The idea of workshopping something is attractive. The monument funding was the one that I think you were just talking about. Right. That we wouldn't have been able to discuss that so freely if we hadn't scheduled that listening session. So I like the workshop format.
I'd Sarah first, and then get to you.
Thank you. So my thought of trying to get our meetings down to 2 hours was a twofold thought. I think if we're able to get that down to 2 hours, we could probably re-engage the community so they start coming back to the meetings. And then we could eventually have listening sessions again. And it was also a little bit about me thinking about the cost of our meetings. Averaging right now, our meetings are costing us just $12,000 just taking minutes a year. So it was twofold thought on that. And that's just minutes. It's not, our time and Cat TV's time and town staff time. So it was kind of twofold thought on that. And I really hope that if we could get to that 2-hour point, we would really see more people coming and then eventually have listening sessions.
Nancy, do you have any thoughts?
You say $12,000 for a meeting?
$12,000 a year averaging our minutes.
Nancy.
That's peanuts compared
Nancy
to
Lively
some
takes
things we spend money
excellent
on.
minutes.
There's a lot of things, depending on what you're discussing, it takes time, and people have to feel that they're welcome to come in here. And the listening session, when I was there, when you brought it up, Clark, we only needed a couple people from the board to show up, and we could have a discussion. If people came in with questions, we could answer them. And I think, a couple of them did go on longer. If somebody goes on and on, you may have to cut them off, but.
Thanks. With apologies to Sarah because we're approaching 2 hours and 15 minutes. One of the things that actually came up during the charter review process was somebody suggested that the listening sessions be specified to have 4 times a year or 6 times a year, whatever it was, but to mandate those sessions. And one of the pushbacks we had on the Charter Review Committee was that we don't want to enshrine that in the charter, and wait and see sort of the community response and if they're needed. And I think kind of what I'm hearing from the board is that things have shifted a little bit, participation has changed, and if we can have a productive session, which I maybe goes back to my point of what would the topic be, I'm all for having a productive session, but maybe the path forward here is to say let's have them on an as-needed basis. If a topic comes up that we're particularly interested in having public input on, then we can go ahead and schedule a listening session, but let's not have them just to have them.
So the first year was monthly, and when we talked last year, a couple people said, well, we'll just do it quarterly, and we decided every other month. And then we went from throwing out, discussing topics ahead of time, the public sending in, then I guess a couple just pick topics. So, I think the monument was the best one. I don't think the other one was housing, wasn't it?
The topics that we did have, if I recall correctly, came from public suggestions that came into the board, and that Jim and I got together with Stu back then and decided that's what we would. We thought those might lead to the most ideas that we could use as a board going forward. That was the criteria, at least I used. Dan, you had something?
So I just wanted to say, I do think the most productive listening sessions were very focused on specific things as opposed to general topics. And we have at least a couple of those coming. I mean, the vacant property ordinance is something I could see us talking about at the board and then going out to the stakeholders. One of those stakeholder meetings could be a listening session. That could be, I could see that being very productive. I think just throwing a general topic out has not been as productive as perhaps we'd hoped it would be. But I think people, when they have something concrete in front of them to talk about and to react to, you can have effective public input. So that would just be my suggestion. I think some of the things coming out of the Economic Development Committee could be topics for a listening session, but I do like the idea of, I've never been a fan of having a meeting just to have a meeting. let's have a purpose for it and feel good about that we're prepared for it and that makes sense, and we're not wasting your time or the folks coming to the meetings time. So that would be my suggestion. You tell me what you folks would like to do. We'll make sure we find available time at this facility and schedule those meetings as you guys would like.
Dan, if I may, as everyone here is sick of hearing me say, I've always felt the most important thing I can do or we can do as town governance is to be available and to hear what people have to say. And I really want people to come forward, whether it be at these meetings, listening sessions, budget sessions, whatever. And you're right, the idea of having a meeting for the purpose of a meeting, no. We got email for that. We got YouTube for that. But I really want to stress to the people listening and the people of Bennington that we want to work with you. We want to hear from you. And we can't operate this town on being stopped in Hannaford's or at Martin's. And yeah, we've had some specific topics that have had good turnouts. I would be very happy if I have to stay here till midnight to do what the people of Bennington truly want done. I would do so. I know Sarah wouldn't, but I understand that too. But I'm saying, right. But I want people to understand that in my mind, the listening session wasn't something just to have. It was to give the people of this town who expressed to me on more than one occasion a level of frustration with not having time to have what was on their mind be heard and presented to this board for possible action. And I will do everything I can to make sure that the people in this town have that option. But if it's an option they don't exercise, I don't think it's fair to my peers or elements of government for people who aren't going to participate. If you aren't willing to step up and speak to us, you really have no reason to complain to me in the grocery store that no one listens to you, because I can speak for Clark. Clark is always willing to listen to you. I just need you to show up and speak up.
So I think what I'm hearing is that people, the majority of us think that the listening sessions did have some value if we directed at least the first conversation toward a particular topic or idea. Would anyone be uncomfortable if I told Dan, find out when the room is available in late March, and also direct Jonah to put out to the public to write in with their ideas for topics?
Can I make a suggestion that if we are looking for a robust topic, that we schedule, I don't know, 3 or 4 of these listening sessions for the balance of the calendar year, and then we solicit topics and we assign a topic to that, one of each of those meetings. And if we didn't end up with a topic for that meeting, there's no demand for that meeting. So then that meeting either gets shelved or repurposed beforehand. But I think that we did well when we had a robust topic.
Okay, so what months would you do we want to go? If we go to March, then 2 months would be May, then July? I don't even want to think that far.
I think that we saw that summer meetings were not productive. People didn't come.
She's right. Summer meetings were hard to get people to. It's hot, they're busy. Yeah.
As were holiday sessions.
Right. So maybe again, we're missing the matching the topic to the meeting. So we're assuming that we're going to do that. Maybe we look at a date before summer, one now that we could really promote once we get, first we solicit topics, we get some topics in here, we talk about them. One of them is robust. We use it for that meeting. We do it before school's out because we know that once school's out, people are on the road. And then we reconvene in the fall meeting, September, when schools are back in session and people are starting to get back to work and home. That would be my thought.
I like the idea of March because that's right before we're doing reorganization. Mm-hmm. We have this meeting, and if there are things out there that I'm sure after the town elections that are running through people's minds, they'll have an opportunity to come here, present those, and maybe we can factor that in when reorganization is occurring, what we need to do, and go forward from there. But yeah, you're right, the summer months are difficult for employment, vacation, all sorts of things across the town. So I think that March would probably be an optimal time for us to kind of get a feel what's on people's minds and where we need to go with when we're reorganizing the board.
Just to throw a counter to that, is it March before we reorganize, or is it April after we reorganize that we entertain? I mean, there's an opportunity either way.
Right.
I think in this particular year, given that the makeup of this board is not going to change, it may not matter if it's March or April.
That's a good point.
No, there could be a massive write-in campaign that we're not aware of out there.
That's why I said it's not likely.
I think I'd like to see a list of potential topics, and maybe we can get something tentatively for April, but I think I'd like to have potential topics come to this board first.
I'll tentatively reserve a couple times in March and April, and I'll work with Jonah to solicit topics. Obviously, you folks may have topics. If the timing works well, maybe the vacant properties one fits right into that. I know there's a lot of passion about revitalizing downtown, so that might be one that makes a lot of sense. I don't know, but I'll just have some tentative dates for you folks, and then get Jonah to start soliciting comments.
Dan, as you know, those big projects we've been speaking of in our small meetings, March, April, we may be able to let the cat out of the bag.
Yep, that's true. That's why I mentioned, I think a lot of the topics that the Economic Development Committee is working on might fit well for these. So.
Maybe that's a topic, maybe that's a session, is the findings of the Economic Development Committee.
Yep.
I like that.
All right.
Well, there's less us.
I think what you just said, Dan, sounds like
Okay.
it might be something we can go forward with.
I will work on that, and you guys can make your final decision.
All right.
Soon.
Jackie, any other business?
No, nothing tonight. Thank you.
Clark.
Again, my standard thank you to the DPW road crew guys. They've been busting their humps for the past few days. The roads look good. And again, I can't thank them enough. And hopefully they will be able to get a weekend. They can take some time off. And
Seems like every weekend we're dealing with it.
If I could, I have something that I want to cover. At the last meeting, we heard from the folks at WBTN about their disappointment in the way that this board may have heard their request for funding, et cetera. And I wanted to reach back out to the folks at WBTN to let them know that in my experience, and my personal feeling on this is that there was no lack of their ability. There was nothing derogatory meant. Oftentimes, these volunteer organizations get saddled with the idea that they are unrestrained, and that was a little bit, I think that was what the WBTN folks may have come away with from our discussion. And I know that when I discussed that, I didn't mean it that way, and I wanted to apologize to those folks. They're certainly one of the most hardworking, small groups of people in a corner of Bennington that are trying to make a difference, and I appreciate what they do. I was disappointed that they left with feeling that their town board had not supported them. So I just wanted to share that.
Thanks very much. And with that, could I please hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I was waiting for Sarah.
I want her to make the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone want to stay?
Thanks, everyone.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
I can't sit next to Nancy Lively anymore, to be honest.
See, that's why they didn't let her sit